Hey there, everyone. Mid-May is upon us. Summer is right around the corner. Hopefully, we will start to be able to get outside more. That would be really nice. Looks like my dog over there, Bailey, is already in summer mode as she's taking her late morning nap. Well, this is Andrew with the Andrew Smith Team eXp Realty with your May 2020 real estate market update. And with the market update this month, I've broken it into three sections for you. So the first one is we're going to take an updated look at the economy, just share the latest news that I have been receiving on what is going on and what the experts and economists are saying we should be looking for going forward. We're going to touch on unemployment. We'll take a deeper dive into the latest numbers and what that is likely to mean for all of us with regards to the real estate market, which is what we will touch upon last. So, looking at the economy overall, we've got a couple of interesting things going on. And Sam Caterford, the chief economist at Freddie Mac, kind of pointed that out. You can see here, although the uncertainty of the crisis means forecasts of economic activity are more unclear than usual, we expect that most of the economic damage from the virus will be contained to the first half of the year. Going forward, we should see a recovery starting in the second half of 2020. That is not anything new. If you've seen any of the updates that have put out over the last couple of weeks or even couple of months as this started, a lot of indications was we should look for a V-shaped type recovery, meaning after a sharp drop in economic activity, we would see a sharp bounce. A lot of them were basing that off of the fact that this economic crisis was not caused by the economy, but it was caused by a health crisis. So a little bit difference there. However, who knows? There's a few different opinions on that, on how long this is going to last. And, when you go back to 2003 and you look at the SARS pandemic and that breakout, Hong Kong was hit pretty hard. And in that particular case, Hong Kong showed a classic V-shaped recovery. They bounced back extremely quickly. But in this particular case, even as some states are starting to reopen, the question becomes, are people just going to suddenly start going outside again, suddenly start sitting in restaurants? And if restaurants that are open are only open at 25% capacity and 50% capacity, is that really feasible? Is that going to mean that things are just going to return to normal, even though it's like a pause button was hit on the economy? It's not like we just hit play again and everything goes back to normal. So even though the bulk of the economists are still saying a V-shaped recovery, there is a handful starting to talk about a swoosh, almost like the Nike symbol. That what they're saying is, yes, it dropped sharply, and they do think it's going to bounce back fairly quickly, but it's not going to bounce back quite as high as originally expected, meaning it'll drop, it'll come back up quickly, but then that will start to flatten out and it won't quite get back to where it was before for another couple of years, possibly. But again, a lot of uncertainty. No one knows for sure. What I do know is here is what the four major financial institutions are calling for: Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Wells Fargo. They right now, as you can see, three of the four are showing that after a drop to GDP in the first and second quarters, they're going to see an increase in GDP in the third quarter and another increase in the fourth. You can see the fourth is a little bit less than the third, which is kind of an indication of that flattening of the recovery a little bit. But again, a lot depends on how long this lockdown lasts for. Yes, certain states are opening back up, but look at LA County in California. They've just announced keeping the shelter in place orders there until the end of July, beginning of August. So I think a lot remains to be seen about what consumers and people do as economies start to reopen. And of course, all of this gets thrown to the wind if we see a huge uptick in the virus resurging sometime in the fall, early winter type time frame. So let's switch over to unemployment. And what we can see here is that unemployment by far is staggering. The numbers are astronomically high on the number of unemployed. And when you look at it like this, you're talking about unemployment numbers that have never really been seen. But I'm not trying to downplay that by any means, but I do want to dig behind those numbers just a little bit because there's always more to the story. A lot of the headlines are based on fear. And yes, there's a lot of people scared. They're scared about the future, they're scared about their jobs. Absolutely. But when you dig behind these numbers a little bit more, they're shocking, but are they catastrophic? And I'm not saying they are or they aren't, but we're going to take a look at that. Now, the one thing to point out here that is important is that the number of new unemployment claims has been falling every week since the end of March. That is good news that those claims are falling. We hope to see that continue. But again, it's still an awful lot of people, and the new numbers should be out tomorrow, which I'll update on next week. But here's the part that's a little bit interesting. When you look at the overall unemployment, dig behind it a little bit. And this breakdown that I'm showing you now is actually from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. So it's actually showing the unemployment rate by industry type. So you can see by and large, leading the way is servers and bartenders. 37.6% of all unemployment claims have come from basically the restaurant and bar industry. Are all of those jobs going to come back? No, because unfortunately, there's some restaurants that are not going to make it. They're not going to be able to reopen, even if the economy was to reopen fully starting tomorrow. But a lot of those jobs will come back. Same with retail. Temporary services are temporary employment. You're looking at those type of things should also start to come back. As you go down this list, the two that I think are important to look at are doctors' offices and childcare. Now, doctors' offices, an unemployment rate of 6.8%. We're in a health crisis, so why the unemployment in doctors' offices? Doctors' offices here are referring to general practitioners, elective surgeries, all of the things that were placed on hold. And in many areas, those type of appointments are starting to be taken again. So those employees are coming back. Same with childcare. There's a lot of people that have been working at home, and as they start to return to work, or if they just get flat out sick of having the kids around every single day, they're going to be looking for preschools and daycare centers to reopen where they can get some relief and maybe a little bit more work done for 1 or 2 days a week. Sorry, we're going the wrong way there. The next interesting thing on the employment to look at is, the latest unemployment number is at 14.7%, which is shown here. Now, when someone files a new unemployment claim, they are asked to say whether they believe their unemployment is permanent or temporary. As you can see here, 90% of all of the unemployment claims filed, they believe that their unemployment is actually temporary. Is that number likely to change? Sure it is, as those jobs don't come back. But the point here is that the feeling has been, or what these employees were told by their employer, is that they shouldn't expect this to be a long-term permanent aspect. How long is it going to take to come back? I'm hearing varying reports, but the consensus seems to be a couple of years. It'll be 2 years or so before unemployment gets back to where it was pre-pandemic levels, assuming nothing else changes. Now, the other part in the bottom of this graph, it's important to look at what percentage of the different demographics are filing for unemployment. 13% of adult men, 15.5% of adult women. but look at teenagers, 31.9%. Those are those teenagers that were working in Starbucks, that were working as waiters, waitresses, bus staff, things like that in many of the restaurants. So I don't bring that up to say, oh, look, it's mainly a teenage problem. I bring that up in light of this being about a real estate market update and what the impact on the real estate market is likely to be. Because many of the bartenders and servers, which were the highest class of unemployed, are not home buyers. They're not people out actively looking to purchase homes. I know my teenager isn't. So, and I think that's going to be the case across the board. So, what is the outlook for housing? Well, according to CNBC, evidence is mounting that home buyers may be coming back to the market after demand plummeted in the past month due to the virus. This has also been echoed by Zillow Group. Zillow are seeing an uptick in the amount of searches being done, and they also believe that the market itself may have already bottomed out. Very, very interesting that they would believe that, because I know that there's some buyers out there that believe the floor is going to fall out, and right now there isn't any evidence of that. Now, where are they getting this information from, or what's leading them to this conclusion? Well, showing time is a service that tracks showing activity amongst different properties. So whether it's a virtual showing, as is very common right now, or an in-person showing, and as you can see, the gold line in the next couple of graphs I'm going to show you here shows the weekly average this year, while the 2019 weekly average is shown in the blue line. Well, if you can see here, we basically, the very end of March, beginning first 2 weeks of April, was the bottom of activity. And it started to come back, and it's continued to come back on an upward trajectory since there. So when this graph here is for all of North America. So, showings nationwide are about 15.8% lower than they were this time a year ago. And that varies depending upon what state or what area you are in. Now, my team operates in Texas, North Texas, and also Southern California. Here's a look at the same date range for Texas. Now, obviously, again, activity dropped towards the end of March. It seemed to bottom out and is coming back. Here's the interesting thing. For Texas, showing activity now is actually 1.5% higher than it was for the same week a year ago. When we flip and look at California, not so much. Showing activity dropped substantially. They have a larger drop than they did a year ago, and the comeback hasn't been quite as fast. But also remember that California's had some of the strictest shelter in place rules of almost any state. So even though the gap between last year and this year continues to narrow, they are still running about 26.5% below the activity that was seen a year ago. Now, what does all of this mean for home prices? Well, I'm not going to go deep into pricing today. If you'd like more information, I put a link directly below this video to last week's blog post that took a look at what home prices are expected. What I can tell you as a recap is that pricing is based on supply and demand. And right now, here's what Mark Fleming, the chief economist of First American, has to say. Housing supply remains at historically low levels. So house price growth is likely to slow, but it's not likely to go negative. His sentiments are being shared pretty much across the board by a lot of people. Even Zillow Group are saying that prices could be flat, and in some areas, if they decrease, it's probably not going to be more than 2%, 3% max. Last week, I shared a quote where someone said prices are not expected to go down in any area of the country more than about 5. And again, we touched on that last week. But what are they referring to with this supply and demand? We'll take a look at this. The bottom part of this graph is showing buyer activity, meaning buyer traffic. To give you an idea what these color codes mean, anywhere shaded in gray is weak activity. The light blue means it's stable, and the dark blue means it's strong. So if we look at the bottom half of this graph, you can see in February, virtually the entire country was dark blue. That's indicating very strong demand. There's a lot of buyer activity out there in the market. In March, that obviously plummeted as the stay-at-home orders went into place. But look at the top part. Seller traffic is referring to listings, new inventory coming onto the market. In February, only Wyoming and Alaska were strong, meaning a lot of listings coming onto the market. The vast majority of the country was weak or stable. When you look at March, it plummeted everywhere. Wyoming and Louisiana were the only ones showing some stability. Alaska remained strong, so not sure what's going on up in Alaska right now, but the rest of the country was weak. So, last week, again, we really went into the fact that there's a massive undersupply of housing. Now, I'm not trying to say that everything in housing is going to be perfect. It's not. But it's important to understand here that the supply and demand is still there. You look at those unemployment figures on who has been most affected, and it's not the people that are generally buying homes by and large. The other thing is, it was interesting. Saw Facebook Live yesterday from an economist talking, and he said the one thing that he has realized now that he has been home for a couple of months is that his current home doesn't suit his needs. He doesn't think it suits his needs going forward, and that he will be in the market for a new home here shortly. How many others do you think that they've come to the same conclusion? Or what about you? Now that you've been working from home or been at home, does your housing needs fit? Do you need an extra room for another home office? Do you realize that you have too much room and it's not really there? It's something that people have begun to look at. You couple that with the fact that there's been an undersupply and there's still very strong demand. It is why that there is not a lot of people indicating that there's going to be any sort of big housing crash. Yes, there's been some headlines, but the evidence, the data right now, as we sit here, today is May 13th as I record this, is just not there. People are going to look. There's also speculation at this point that there'll be a shift towards the suburbs, that people won't want to live based on this pandemic in tightly crowded, populated cities. They're going to look for a little bit more space, but that remains to be seen. So hopefully that has helped explain what we're looking at currently. If you've got any particular questions, please reach out. As I mentioned before, I did put a couple of links directly below this video to other recent videos that I've done on similar topics. And feel free, hit that subscribe button along with the little bell to be notified when I put some new information out there to stay up to date on the latest real estate market activity.